Am I the a-hole for not giving my cousin my emergency fund? I'm 24 female. I'm a bit paranoid when it comes to money. I didn't grow up in poverty, but times are tough and the idea of living paycheck to paycheck makes me uncomfortable. It's important to mention that now I have a stable, good-paying job, but I struggled a lot during college, since my parents weren't able to save enough for my college fund. So I worked awful jobs and I was constantly exhausted during those years. I still ended up in some debt and I want to be free of it ASAP. It's also important to mention that I come from a pretty religious family. When I landed this job, I decided to start an emergency fund. I put aside a few $100s every month so in case anything happens, I get sick, lose my job, etc., I will not end up in more debt or even worse. The only people that know about it are my sister and I, who also plans to start her own emergency fund after she graduates and lands a good job. I 100% trust my sister, so I think my aunt or someone else overheard us talking about it. Now the issue is, my cousin's 22 male girlfriend, 22 female, is pregnant, and they decided to keep it even though they know damn well they can't afford it. None of them has a stable job, inheritance, or anything. A few days ago, he came to ask me to give him my emergency fund, since he is having an emergency. I was speechless. I asked him what he was talking about, even though I knew, but I couldn't believe someone can have this audacity. He told me he knew I have savings and he desperately needs them. He didn't even mention giving the money back. I told him those are my savings, for when I am having an emergency, but he pulled the family helps family card. I still said no. While I understand they are in a difficult situation, I still think it's not fair that I am asked to pay for his mistakes. I told him they should think more about what they are going to do in the future, and how they are going to support this child if none of them has a stable income. And even if I give them my savings, those money are enough for only a few months. For me, for a family of 3, even less. I did not mention termination, adoption, or anything, just that they are irresponsible for having a kid when none of them is financially stable. He eventually left me alone, but started to tell the rest of the family that I told him to get rid of the baby, which is not true at all. My parents and my sister are on my side, but the rest of the family started harassing us and calling me a godless witch. So am I the a-hole for keeping my savings? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. His lack of planning is not your emergency. This story is also a good example of how letting other people tell your story usually works against you. For the members of your family that you care about, I would reach out to them and clear up any misconceptions. Obviously, the people calling you godless are probably not people you want around. You could even say that you meant adoption. I'm religious, and I don't know of anyone that has a problem with giving up a baby for adoption. Not the a-hole. In my opinion, it doesn't matter who would tell the story. What they'll hear is cousin needs financial help and Opie didn't help him even though she has the money to do it. Respectfully, that is just not true. It always matters who tells the story first. That is just propaganda 101. You have probably heard the phrase, let's get out ahead of this. In TV shows, it often is used to portray a government or corporation saying they should own up to impropriety before a news organization breaks the news. They do this because it is better for them to spin it in a way that is beneficial, before someone else breaks the same story but includes tiny details that spin the story in a negative way. If his family think you are so awful, why aren't they handing over their own cash? I don't know if anyone else besides my parents has any savings, and I don't want to bring this up because I'm afraid I may give them another reason to harass me. Then go no contact with them. I would anyway, because I think you're looking at 18 years worth of demands for money here. And babysitting requests because I can see that happening too. Opie not the a-hole. I'm a bit surprised that your pretty religious family didn't give your cousin an earful for getting his girlfriend pregnant, since they are not married yet. If he couldn't afford a kid, then he should have kept it in his pants. It is your money, not his. Family help family is fine, but what he is asking is for you to support him financially. And if he gets his hand out, he'll be back because he got a good paying job. Thank you. They actually were a bit upset with him for getting her pregnant before marriage, and I suspect this is why he lied about me suggesting an abortion. He tried to give them another person to judge. If this was the case, it worked 100%. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister to admit she was a crappy mom? I'm 45, Sarah's 51, Tom's 55, and Rose is 26. My sister Sarah is married to Tom and they have a daughter Rose. A few weeks ago, Rose and Tom got into an accident. They were carpooling to an event, and Sarah was going to go later after work. Thankfully, they're both recovering now, but Rose was significantly worse off than Tom. Sarah got the news and she called me from the hospital. I was there a few hours after Sarah and they wouldn't let me inside to see them. But Sarah came out and told me the updates on Tom. She hadn't been to see Rose yet, but she said she got her updates from the nurses. I stayed overnight at a hospital. Sarah was with Tom the entire time, and she'd come out occasionally. I'd ask her if she wanted to go to Rose, but she kept crying and saying that she was worried about Tom, so I let it go. Tom was cleared to go home 2 days later, but Rose was in for almost a week, and I was allowed to see her later. Her partner was out of state for work, but he came back and was allowed in as well. During all this, Sarah didn't physically go to see Rose once while Tom was still in, and only went after he went home. So 2 days later, Rose told me that she was hurt her mom didn't come to see her earlier. A couple of days ago, Sarah called me saying she went over to Rose's apartment, but she and her partner were acting very cold towards her, and she's also been ignoring Sarah's calls and texts. I told her that she pretty much neglected Rose at hospital and hurt her feelings. Sarah said she got Rose's updates and Tom needed her a lot more. I said that Rose's situation was a lot worse, but Sarah said that she was just trying to do her best and Rose is an adult and can push through. I got tired of her excuses, so I told her to just admit that she was a crappy mom to Rose, and she's lucky they let her into the apartment at all. Sarah got upset, said I was enabling Rose's behavior. I haven't talked to her since then, but was I the a-hole for saying that? Not the a-hole. I cannot wrap my head around the fact that her daughter was in hospital for a whole week and she didn't visit her once. It makes me wonder what Rose's childhood was like. I edited the post a bit for clarity, but Sarah did go to see Rose after Tom went home, so 2 days later. The first couple of days were especially bad for Rose, and she said that she was upset Sarah didn't come to see her once then. Well, that's marginally better, but still, who has an injured child and ignores them for 2 days? If I were Tom, I'd be pissed my wife never visited our daughter for 2 days even though she was in the same hospital. Sarah's lucky daughter didn't go full no contact after revealing her true colors. Not the a-hole. Something's not right with your sister. Using your sister's logic, Tom is an adult and can push through for a few hours a day so she can go check in their daughter. Not the a-hole. Makes me wonder what kind of a person you need to be to do such a thing. And if Tom was conscious at the time, didn't he ask about their daughter at all? If it were my parents, my dad would insist on my mom staying with me or my sister. I don't get some parents these days. Doesn't your child's well-being come first? Sure, your partner is important too. But if your child is significantly worse, at least split the time between them. No matter if they're 3 or 30, that's your kid. You're supposed to care. Not the a-hole. That was absolutely poor mommying. I can't imagine for a second that there wasn't an opportunity to see Rose as well as her husband, even if she was emotionally distraught at first. Rose likely feels this showed her mom's true feelings toward her. That's what I told her too, but she just kept saying that Tom needed more support and Rose isn't a child anymore, so she'll be fine. Next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for asking my children's grandparents to watch over them? I am the blessed mother of 2 kids young enough to need permanent supervising. Since the first one was born, I refused to be a stay-at-home mom because I can't give every breathing second of my life towards my children. I love my family very much, but every now and then I need some me time to kick back. I discussed it with my husband at the beginning of our family life, and we agreed to give each other the space we need among the family and couple life. So, I'm no stranger to going out having some fun time either by myself or with my friends while my kids are home with dad. My husband prefers to give up his alone time in our family's favor. Don't get me wrong, I'd always drop everything if there's a problem with my kids or him, but he likes to spend time with us even when he could be doing something different. I have nothing against it and support him whatever he decides. If he wants to stay in, he's welcome. If he wants to go out, I got him. One weekend, I had this fancy appointment I was really looking forward to. I've been speaking about it the whole week. Both the kids and husband knew perfectly well about it. Thursday night, my husband received an invitation from one of his coworkers. It was overlapping my appointment, but he said he'd like to go. I told him he totally should and that we'll speak to the kids' grandparents to watch them. Then he lost it. He complained, why do we have to ask someone to watch our kids as they should be our responsibility? He complained about how he usually stays home with the kids when I go have fun and how I can't support him. I reminded him about a couple times he went out and I stayed in, but he said it's been more times the other way around and it's not fair. I told him it's not a freaking contest and that I'm not free, so I can't watch the kids. I don't understand why he can't accept a solution that would end all of us happy. The two of us get to have our fun and both the kids and the grandparents love to spend time each other. It almost sounds like he is jealous I'm also having a good time without him, just like he is without me. I also want to mention we have left the kids with their grandparents multiple times when we attended events together without a problem. So I don't get what's the issue now. Is it something I'm oblivious to? Info. How often would you say that you go out to do your own thing and leave your husband watching the kids? Because I'm getting the feeling that his issue isn't about this specific appointment. Maybe around 3 or 4 times a month. Sometimes more often than the other times, I guess. There are moments when I'd rather stay with the kids, but my husband attends events that would require my presence too, so I sometimes go out with him and don't feel the need to go out for a while. I also want to mention we have left the kids with their grandparents multiple times when we attended events together without a problem, so I don't get what's the issue now. Is it something I'm oblivious to? Resentment. He thinks you do your own thing too much. From some of the statements you made, it seems like it's a chore to spend time with your family. Being there if they really need it isn't the same as choosing and enjoying being with your family you created. The whole, hey, I support his decision to spend time with the kids when he doesn't have to is weird, right? Like she can't understand why he'd pick that instead of going out constantly, like she does. Opie could be a great parent. However, her language and the vibe the post gives off to me makes it seem like she wants to be anywhere else but home with her family, unless she has to be. It honestly feels like her husband wanted kids and she didn't, and that this was the compromise. Except the husband had no idea what he was asking for when he asked for it and is pissed off that Opie's sticking to the agreement. How many times has Reddit seen this in reverse and called the dad who didn't want the kids a deadbeat for it? Last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for not getting rid of my dog from my dog-phobic stepdaughter? My husband and I have a modern Brady Bunch with my 2 kids, his daughter and our child together. My 2 are early elementary school. Our child together is a year old and his daughter is 15. His daughter only comes around in the summer, and due to things, this is her first summer visit since her father and I got together in 2020. She's a very good kid, gets good grades. The only issue is that his daughter has a deep fear and disgust around one thing and one thing only: dogs. I was told that there was a general culture against dogs where she was raised. But that culture intensified when there was a tragedy a few years ago involving dogs and some neighborhood children. My husband's daughter saw the entire thing, and it stuck with her. I have a 6-year-old golden retriever who my kids and I love dearly. I was worried that it could be a problem, but my husband told me it wasn't a problem because it wasn't the same kind of dog, and she could be polite about it. It lasted about 4 hours. The day she landed, we came home from dinner and then suddenly hear screaming coming from upstairs. It sounded like an emergency, so we rushed in. And it was because a few dog hairs had gotten on her clothes from Augie walking around the room. She spent hours freaking out over it. She ran everything she got through the wash 3 full times, using an entire container of OxiClean in the process, and deep cleaned the entire room. We obviously did everything possible to prevent Augie from going near her room after that and always kept the door closed, but it only got worse from there. She refused to sit on the living room furniture because it was dirty, obsessively vacuumed anywhere he could have been until I hit a vacuum, and jumped back and screamed anytime that he could have gotten near her. It was very clear that something not good was going to happen if they continued living together. So we found an Airbnb down the street solely for her and split time there. It was incredibly expensive, but it worked for the summer and allowed for some normal visit time. We absolutely cannot afford to do that again for 3 more summers. My husband now wants to get rid of the dog because he thinks it's unfair to his daughter to be kicked out of her home anyway, even if we did have the money. But I will not get rid of Augie. He's part of the family. I love him, and the children that are all here more than her love and are bonded to him. It's not fair to them to get rid of him for a part-time child. We've been arguing about this for days now, and now his mom and his ex-wife are involved because of how this affects his daughter. They're all saying I don't love his daughter and I'm playing favorites. I don't think I am. Not the a-hole. Keep your sweet pup and insist on therapy for the kid. Living life scared of dogs is no way to live. Edited to add, this kid doesn't even live with you. She's just a visitor. You do more harm to the children who do live with you and are bonded to Augie if you rehomed him. Therapy is a new concept for both of her parents and their backgrounds. Her mom didn't think it was necessary because she also believes dogs are something dirty to be avoided at all costs. Her father did try, but her first therapist was so bad that it was counterproductive. It was less than a year after the incident. The therapist wanted to diagnose her with OCD before ever meeting her, which was already a bad sign, but it had to be cut short when the therapist brought his own dog as exposure therapy for the first session involving her. Both families still talk about it, and now the attitude about therapy is only negative. I wouldn't rule out what the therapist said because it sounds like she does have OCD with having to clean like that. That's a symptom of OCD, but exposure therapy shouldn't have been in her first session. Not the a-hole, and her parents need to get her therapy ASAP. This is extreme behavior. She is not over the trauma of what happened. They've tried. It was so bad that it made things worse. That's great. They need to try it again. Otherwise, she won't be able to visit her dad ever again. Unless if you get rid of your dog and never get another dog ever again.